purpose of today very much is to make you familiar with our suppliers in the markets. But first of all, just a couple of little things around the etiquette. So we are going to be recording the session. In fact, Laura has just hit on the record. So if you wouldn't mind, please keep your mics on mute and your videos off as well. If you'd like to put any questions to our expert panel or to our suppliers or to our speaker, Andy Grayland, today, by all means do add them into the chat. However, this is a really packed session, so we are not necessarily going to be picking up on the questions during the event, but as with the last event that we did on the 30th of March, we will be doing a post mailing, and all of our suppliers and speakers have agreed that they will answer any questions that come. So I'll give you reminders through the session, but if you're putting a question to a particular supplier, you know how sometimes you think about it there and then, sometimes you think just afterwards. So you can either put the name of the supplier and your question, or the name of the panel member and your question, or you can put all and then the question, so that everybody can consider what it is that you're asking, so that we can make sure that this is as meaningful as possible for you. So if you have any other things that come up, any questions, you know that Craig O'Donnell is specifically, his specific role is around the housing transition from analogue to digital, and that he's based in the digital office. And so if you put any specific queries to Digital Telecare at digitaloffice.scot, as you can see on the screen there, that would be great. Any broader questions, by all means, you can come back to me on those. So just to give you a little bit of a run through about what we're going to do today. Don't worry, I'm not going to be speaking for too long. I'll just give you a little bit of a recap on where we're up to. And then I'm really pleased to say that Andy Grayland, who's Chief Information Security Officer with the Digital Office, will be telling us a little bit about the Digital Telecare Security Assessment Scheme. I think you'll be very interested in that. Then we'll introduce you to our panel of experts and have a bit of a presentation there, again, just to get everybody's heads back into the zone on this. And then I'll be handing over to Tim, and he'll be, sorry, if there's stuff coming up on the screen there, he'll be running the pitches. So all of our suppliers, so then when you get the chance to meet the suppliers, hear what they're saying. And as you know, this session is very, very specifically on suppliers and on the group living systems. So TSA did a really excellent session in December about dispersed units. And this may be something that housing wants to move towards, or some housing providers wants to move towards. And that's where you have individual personalised units in each property. They did a meet the suppliers all around that in December. There's a recording and there's slides of all of those presentations. So we will be putting that in the post mailing so that you can see that. But we didn't want to duplicate. We want to do things in partnership with other folks doing things in this area, but we want to give you a very specific one on group living. And then, as you know, we've got the follow-up session in 2 weeks today on the 26th, and that will be looking at some of the more alternative kind of solutions that are out there. So once we've had all of those suppliers talks, then we'll be really interesting to hear what our panel of experts think about these. And so I'm really delighted. We've got Dorothy Askew here from Aberdeen City Council, and we've got Gregor Ross from Hanover Housing Association, and of course we've got Craig. So they'll be giving us very valuable insights and all of that. So we're going to try and keep to time. I know that Tim is going to try and very much keep all of our suppliers to time. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andy, and we'll hear more about the Digital Telecare Security Assessment Scheme. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me just share my slides. Have you got the correct screen there?
Yes, that's looking great, thank you.
Okay, great. So as I was introduced, I'm Andy Grayland. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the Digital Office, and we look after a large part of the Telecare programme in Scotland. An overview of what we're going to talk about for the next 10 minutes. Supplier security in the public sector is a major risk. It's probably one of our, if not the top risk for the public sector, as we have very little control over the security threats and protections that suppliers implement in their systems. Since 2018 and the implementation of GDPR, this is now a shared responsibility. So suppliers take some responsibility in the protection of that information where they're part of a service infrastructure. However, having said that, councils will be the one who are held accountable for failures, not suppliers. So if the service goes offline, it will be councils, or in this presentation is for another purpose, but I've repurposed it here. This also applies to group living suppliers as well. They'll be the ones who are held accountable, not the suppliers of their equipment. Individual customers to those suppliers have very little sway over supplier security under normal circumstances, and niche markets like digital telecare don't really allow for market forces to drive change. I don't think if we just sat here, then the market would naturally evolve to a particularly secure endpoint. And in some cases, suppliers, particularly small suppliers, this area is fantastic for innovation, and there's some very, very small suppliers with a very few number of staff. Sometimes they can be unaware of the standards that they need to achieve and the legal obligations they might have in terms of meeting the elements of GDPR. And why does it matter in terms of move to digital telecare? Well, in the old world, we had analog telephone system where there was a direct connection from the home or the group living area through a telephone exchange, making a direct communication to the alarm receiving centre. What's changed now? Well, now that it's digital, and this model represents someone using a mobile device to connect an alarm device through to an alarm receiving centre, but of course there are devices on the market which can connect direct to the internet. But either way, we now have connections going through what these clouds represent: the internet, the mobile service provider's telephone network, usually some kind of device management platform sitting in the cloud or in a premise somewhere that's not hosted by the care provider, and then an alarm receiving centre at the end there. In order to do something bad to the analog system, you would have to have found the actual cable that the individual call was going across and cut into it and tap off the call. And even then you would only be listening to the call. It'd be very difficult to have a wide scale impact on the entire network. For the digital service, this internet bubble here is connected to the rest of the world, and that's what gives us the biggest cause concern. 90% of the attacks we're seeing on the internet at the moment are automated. They're looking for standard vulnerabilities that people haven't closed down, and they're using computers without people behind them to prosecute them. In the case of a potentially high value target such as digital telecare, that we probably fit into that last 10% where there are actual trained hacking organizations with hundreds of employees who will sit on the network and attempt to do anything they can in order to hold that network to ransom and to gain finances through that method. So what are the kind of worst case scenarios? At the lower end, you've got a local criminal who's able to steal a mobile SIM and run up a huge phone bill, or a bored teenager who maybe lives with their gran who needs a call alarm, who's able to disrupt alarm signals or calls. And then as we ramp up in complexity, there might be an international criminal who's able to disrupt alarm signals or calls and hold the care provider to ransom. Or we might see an international criminal who's able to gain remote access to sensitive care data in the ARC and then sell that for personal gain. And this is just an indication of this, both ends of the spectrum. It's not an exhaustive list. Where are the threats within the system? Well, you have the alarm at one end, and because generally speaking, these are not in controlled environments, they're in people's houses or they're in a group living accommodation. They're not secured in the same way that we would normally have them in an office or in a server room. So there's an extra level of security that we need to look at on the alarm devices. The internet itself can be a massive issue in terms of people listening in or looking for vulnerabilities automatically. The device management platform usually contains enough data in there that would enable an attacker to take action against the entire network, because it has all of the data about what connects to what, which devices are where, and what addresses those devices have. And then finally, the alarm receiving centre, and in most cases, not all cases, but in most cases, this is where all the sensitive personal information is that we'd be concerned about protecting from theft. So as a group of 32 councils, we decided to take some action prior to going out to procurement. The first thing we did was develop a supplier questionnaire, and we handed that out to the health and social care partnerships for individual issuance to suppliers. So the idea being there was that each of those 26, I believe, Telecare services would send their own questionnaire, which was a mirror to each of the suppliers that they were interested in purchasing from, and those suppliers would fill them back in. It provided health and social care partnerships a minimum baseline for which to assess against on their procurement. It wasn't really a great success. There were some good points. It was lightweight, didn't require a lot of funding on our side. It was hands-off and enabled health and social care partnerships to apply their own risk methodologies. But the bad points were that suppliers came back to us and said we're frustrated with 3 councils sending us exactly the same security questionnaire. Some of the suppliers didn't have the right level of sophistication to answer the questions on the questionnaire, and no single health and social care partnership had enough sway to mandate change in a supplier security posture. Additionally, the health and social care partnerships didn't have the resources or knowledge to actually challenge question answers on those supplier sheets. They were really relying on expertise coming from external. So that took place about 2 years ago. In about 9 months ago, we came up with attempt 2, which was a centralised assessment process. We got some funding from the Cabinet Office in order to create a supplier security assessment process for digital telecare suppliers in Scotland. The key objectives were that it was going to be voluntary. We're not going to force any suppliers to take part in it. But in saying that, we wanted maximum supplier engagement, so we really had to design it so that it was an incentive for suppliers to take part rather than a disincentive. We wanted to offer assistance in bringing their technologies up to the relevant standard, because you probably guessed, but we are happy with the number of suppliers that exist in Scotland, because a competitive marketplace means we get better technologies. The last thing we want to do is effectively say, here are the secure ones and all of the rest of them can go in the bin. We want every single supplier who applies to join the assessment process to actually pass, because it's better for us in the long run. And we needed trust between suppliers and assessors, and the way we did that was by having a non-customer based group of assessors, which I head up, and that group signed a non-disclosure agreement so that we would not disclose vulnerabilities to the customers directly. We wanted a simple process for health and social care partnership project managers with limited technical knowledge, and we wanted zero cost for health and social care partnerships. We did try to make the cost for suppliers limited as possible. There's no cost for taking part in the assessment process, but one of the bits of evidence that needs to be supplied is penetration testing of your equipment or service, and that comes at a cost. You have to do that with an independent penetration test company, which we can't do for you. So how did we actually get there? Well, we took the old supplier security questionnaire and we refined that, and we issued it to each supplier once. I should say that initially we just issued it to those suppliers who were looking at health and social care partnerships for councils, and we are only just now opening it up to group living suppliers. So I know that 4 of you at least have contacted Craig with an interest to join the scheme. I will be getting back to you very shortly about how to do that, and if anyone else is interested in taking part in the scheme, please email that email address that we saw at the start of the presentation, the Digital Office group mailbox. The first thing we do is enter into a non-disclosure agreement with each other. The supplier will pay for penetration testing of devices and services to be offered for sale in Scotland. We'll then conduct a risk-based assessment of those devices, services, and the supplier itself. The supplier is then either accepted onto the supplier list or accepted onto the list with an agreed timetable for remediations, or offered remedial guidance to improve and welcome for reassessment. There's no limit to the number of times that you can be reassessed if you need to keep on going away and fixing things. Eventually, Scotland Excel, when they create their new digital framework, will introduce a question relating to the supplier assessment scheme on that framework, which will mean that organisations in Scotland who want to use that framework to procure digital telecare services will be able to ask it as a question in their procurement, and that will then allow them to narrow down the number of suppliers that they're able to choose from based on who's on the list and who isn't. Here's a bit of a flow chart, and I'm happy to make these slides available to everyone. I'm also happy to have individual meetings with each of the suppliers if you want me to go through this in more detail. I appreciate we've only got 10 minutes, and you can tell by the speed at which I'm talking that I'm struggling to fit it all into that timeline. So you start off as an unassessed supplier. You then move into the assessment process where you contact me and ask to take part. I'll send you the information security questionnaire, which you'll fill in. At the same time, you will organise penetration tests of your devices or services that you want to sell into the Scottish market. Well, they'll be reviewed by my panel, and then we'll decide if it needs remedial work. If there's no remedial work required, then we'll give you assessed status straight away, and we'll put you on a list which is available on the Digital Telecare Playbook website. And if there is remedial work, then we will have a meeting with you and discuss negotiation remediation timescales. If you choose not to complete that remediation, you will go back and appear to any customer as an unassessed supplier. So there's absolutely no disbenefit to taking part in this scheme. If you apply and fail, none of your customers will know what your vulnerabilities were or that there was any bad things at all. To the outside world, you will appear just as though you never applied for the scheme in the first place. In terms of outcomes, we have a high proportion of the existing Scottish market related to health and social care partnership, Telecare at the moment, and some new providers, which is great to see. We've got some new digital service providers that have never been in the digital telecare space before. They've come from a purely technology space and they're now moving into this market, and that's really great to see. We've got the first supplier, device and service on the list. They went live at the end of January. We're about to put another 3 on the list in the very near future. So far, we've detected 21 vulnerabilities or issues. So far, 6 of those were remediated by suppliers immediately, and 15 have an agreed timetable for rectification. Some suppliers have issued letters of intent to achieve industry recognised standards where they don't already hold one, such as ISO 27001, which is the major private sector industry security standard. And overall, we've had good positive feedback from the suppliers who've engaged with our scheme. That's the end of the presentation. I don't think we've got any time for questions, but I will hand back over. And
yeah, Andy, thanks very much for that. I know that was a huge challenge to be able to fit so much into such a small amount of time. But I think what we're really trying to let all of you housing providers see is the amount of work that's going on in the background, and for you to be able to hear what the suppliers are hearing, so that you will have confidence that when you're going looking for different products, that there are systems in place that can reassure you, especially with all of the risks that are out there. That really captures what we're trying to do here, isn't it, Andy? That's
correct. Yeah. It's but also on the other side, so that we're not overloading suppliers by asking them the same questions over and over again.
Yeah. That's lovely. Andy, thank you very much. Andy's slides, as with the recording, will all be on the Digital Office, Digital Telecare site, and will also be on the TSA site. So you will be able to see all of these. So, so no worries there. Now, I'd like to invite Craig and Dorothy and Gregor to turn on their screens and their cameras. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So at our first event, we were talking about, for all of the people who are on the call who remember, we were talking about the importance of partnership working. We were talking about the importance of engaging with tenants, and we were talking about the opportunities for service redesign. But I think with you guys, what we really want to hear now is that overarching thing from you, Craig, about what you think is important to be hearing from the suppliers. From Dorothy, we know that you've got loads of commissioning and support, and Gregor, incredible technical background. So what we're going to do is you'll hear from each of our panel now to tell you just a little bit about their credentials. Gregor is then going to give us a little presentation, and then we'll sit back with the rest of you, hear the pitches, and then you'll hear what Craig and Dorothy and Gregor feel about the things that are important to them and how those presentations link into that. So Craig, you're at the top of my screen. Would you mind going first and just saying a little bit about what your role is and what your credentials are, why you've been invited to be an expert?
Okay, so I'm Craig O'Donnell. I'm the Housing Transition Programme Manager for Digital Telecare. So effectively what that means is my role is to assist and guide housing providers across Scotland who have group living systems to get them from analogue to digital technology setup. My background is in primarily health and social care partnerships. So I worked at Edinburgh Health and Social Care Partnership, managing Telecare, sheltered housing support and business as well. I'm quite interested to hear from these suppliers today just about what they have on offer and how that feeds into kind of future digitisation and how it can kind of incorporate things like digital inclusion as well. Yeah, that's me.
Lovely, Craig, thank you. I'm so mindful of this time, and Gregor, I really want to hear your presentation. Dorothy, would you mind just taking 2 minutes just to say, or a wee minute just to say who you are and what you do?
Yep, no problem. I'm Dorothy Askew. I work with Aberdeen City Council in the Housing Strategy team. I've had 19 years plus experience working in housing strategy with a focus really working closely with the Health and Social Care Partnership and a focus on specialist housing and independent living. So during that time, I've also spent about 3, almost 4 years on secondment to the Health and Social Care Partnership. So I've built up a good understanding of the issues that face us and what we need to overcome with the use of technology. I was involved way back pre the tech programme, but also was very heavily involved in Aberdeen City Council's bids towards the tech programme, and we've looked at a mix of off-the-shelf and bespoke inbuilt solutions. So for me, really, it's finding out a little bit more about what's out there and what we can, what we can find to help our tenants and our service users. That's the key thing for me.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. Gregor, I'm sure you're seeing this time ticking away. Why don't you say who you are, and then what we'll do is you can share your screen and bring everybody into what's happening and how it's relevant for us in housing.
Okay, so I'm Hanover's ICT manager, otherwise known as Hanover's Grumpy Geek. I've been in this industry for IT and housing for about 27 years. With Hanover recently for 11 years. And I think 2012 we moved to a dual centre operation, so live in 2 different sites rather than a DR and one live. And then when the Forth Road Bridge closed in 2015, we basically sort of, people can get to the alarm centre, so we had to start getting operators operating from home. So before the pandemic, we were getting our operators to work from home, sort of thing. And there's just loads of different things I've done with Telecare, with the reports and stuff like that. I'm enthusiastic. I like asking questions, and I'm sure all the suppliers know I like asking questions. But what I'll do is when I was asked to come on here, I was trying to think of a way of how we could show this. So what my idea is to basically do a presentation and show what my thoughts are with the analog to digital side of things. And I shall just share my entire screen. That's what I'll do. Is that okay?
That's lovely, Gregor, thanks.
Good. Right, so we'll start with the basics on what we have for our ward and call system. So our customer basically pushes their button, it comes through the ward and call system, through the phone socket, through the street cabinets, into the ARCS connections or the multiple PSTNs, and then through to the alarm receiving centre. Some alarm receiving centres have multiple alarm receiving centres, so the routes have to be connected therefore as well. And also some of the ward and call systems have a second route out through a GSM should the phone socket fail, and then into the ARCS, different routes into there. Now come 2025, when basically sort of Openreach decides to stop the service, the PSTN service coming off them, so the service won't be allowed anymore. I don't know what date in 2025, but it's happening that year. So we will have to either upgrade that line to broadband or have a new line from the street cabinet into our location. So that's what we basically have for the basics just now. So if we go forward into what I think we're going to need, so our street cabinets have been upgraded. There's Openreach have come along, stuck fibre sticker on there, and hopefully some cards. So we'll have to provide internet connections at each location. So for the ward and call systems and from the ARCs as well. So we'll have to provide internet access there. Now the connections, the more connections you have for your ward and call system, the better. So we're providing Ethernet or cable connections, Wi-Fi connections, 4G or 5G connections for the internet. The more connections provided, the more resilience you've got in there. And we'll have to test each of these connections as well. And for the alarm receiving centre, multiple internet connections, but we have to supply multiple IPs, multiple URLs, multiple SIP connections. The more, the better resilience. We can't, with the ward and call systems, you can get IP ones that will do video calls, all fancy side of things. We can't afford to upgrade them all. So manufacturers are giving a digital connector. That can be internal or an external connector like this, and this will help communicate the ward and call system through the digital connector and using the internet to be the route. On top of that, we've got to select the protocol or the language basically that the new ward and call system will use. The two main ones are now IP and CENLEC, which is escape with an encryption. Now, whichever one you select for the ward and call system to use, the alarm receiving center has to use the same one. They both have to speak the same language, basically. Again, the testing of this is so critical to make sure that the testing is done and the resilience on those. The call priority for these, so you need to make sure the ward and call system has a list of call priorities. So, for example, the first call someone presses, we'll go through the Ethernet connection and then through to ARC1. Now, if something happens at the internet for ARC1, then the ward and call system doesn't have a successful failure, it will immediately jump down to the second option, Ethernet through to ARC2. And if something happens to the Ethernet here, it'll jump down to 3 and using the Wi-Fi or 4G and so on. It's basically just having multiple routes through to the multiple ARCs, just basically for the resilient side of things. Now, on top of what Andy just said, was basically we know security is really, really important. Now, my opinion is that basically the security should be on the manufacturer rather than being put onto the internet connection. So the manufacturer, basically, regardless of which type of internet connection you use, as long as it's on there, it shouldn't really matter and be easier to install. But that internet connection, that encryption security, should also be shared with the ARC. So as long as it's using the same key, that way you can help protect the ARC so it knows what's coming into it, and then so protecting the number of things, so that basically has it all identified sharing the same security key on theirs. Now, with all the equipment you've just installed at the ward and call center, we need to put in a power supply for that as well, because should the power go down, then the internet is not going to work, and disconnector is not going to work. So we need to make sure that there's sufficient power supply to maintain if there should be a power cut forever how long. And the last thing that I'll be looking to find out information for is what happens with a faulty unit. With the digital systems, calls are much faster and can be generated a lot quicker. So how they handle a faulty unit is going to be quite interesting to me. And that's me, basically. I hope that's been a little bit helpful.
Gregor, that's been absolutely fantastic. You've given us a really clear impression there. I hope everybody on the call feels they will. They'll probably need to re-watch this, because this is a lot of information that we're throwing at you all. But hopefully the combination of that and now what you're about to hear, and then we'll come back to Dorothy and Craig and Gregor and hear a little bit more about what their views are. So guys, I'd enjoy the show and Camera's off, mic's off, and I'm going to hand over to Tim now. Tim, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Oh, fantastic. Yes, so this is Tim. This is Business and Strategy Lead for Tech Services Association, known to many of us as TSI. Tim, I'm already the first one for you to get annoyed at because I've run over. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to hand over to you and let you get started.
No, really good. Thanks, everyone. And really interested from Gregor as well. So nice piece of positioning there. I'm going to ask Paul Eden to jump on the call. NCS, first on. Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Good afternoon. Very well. Thank you, Tim.
Good, man. Are you able to share your presentation?
I am.
There you go. And just, that's the one. OK, I'll hand over to you, Paul, and I'll jump in after 10 minutes.
Terrific. OK, thanks very much, Tim. Firstly, a big thank you to Digital Telecare and the Tech in Housing for the opportunity to present today. For those that don't know me, my name is Paul Eden. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director for Network Communication Systems, often referred to as NCS. NCS, we're based in Yorkshire, but we do operate across the whole of the UK. We design, manufacture and maintain tech equipment, as well as door entry and access control systems. Our mission statement sets out our approach to the tech industry. At Network, we promote a customer-focused approach, building and strengthening relationships based on quality and honesty. You don't need to be told by me that the world around us is changing, and do suppliers really understand from a customer's perspective the challenges that they face? We take the approach of looking at it from that customer's perspective. It can be confusing and there are a lot of things to consider. But myths need to be busted, but your only option is not to rush headlong into a decision now, but to carefully consider, discuss the options, but you still have to be ready for the digital transition. There is also a risk that you may become too committed to what might become a closed shop. There is an option for a supplier to be agnostic, and that's what we're working towards. Let me introduce you to the Universal Digital Communicator, the UDC. It's not just a digital translator, it offers so much more. It can connect to our own Harmony Warden call system, and I was delighted that Gregor refers to Warden call systems because it's a term that seems to have fallen out of favour. Warden call systems are still part of group living as much as Telecare is part of assisted living. The UDC translates on-site, at source, the audio from the Harmony Warden call system to Now IP. The Now IP then goes out across broadband, Ethernet or the 4G, and everything is included in our proposition to work straight away. But herein lies a big consideration for all IP systems. What if the alarm receiving centre is not ready? Can I keep the PSTN going until it's time as the ARC is IP ready? So the question about grouped digital living upgrade is as much about the centre being ready as the field equipment. More of that in a moment. As the UDC is installed on site, it can connect directly to the PSTN line for any Warden call system and translate TT-New into Now IP. No delays, not hitting the telephone network, just real-time conversion. However, it is ARC dependent again. No Now IP at the ARC, UDC will sit in legacy mode, i.e. PSTN. It is manufacturer agnostic, a unique proposition. Gregor mentioned about resilience, and we've built in as much resilience as we can. The UDC has a 4G backup and includes the SIM costs for 12 months. It has a router built in, so there are no communication provider dependencies. Of course, it's battery backup, and it's at the moment set for 10 hours, but it could be longer, but that is certainly longer than the Warden call system's battery backup. NCS will visit your site, install the UDC, and commission and test through to your ARC in Now IP mode if it is ready. If not, we'll test it to our own ARC and leave it in PSTN mode and return to reactivate the SIM and retest the ARC when you're ready to go. We also have an all IP system. Let me introduce you to Symphony, a full IP system with options of the Melody dispersed alarm or a TFT Android tablet, with all the features and benefits that can offer a service user. My personal view is to say that this is still very high end in the market, as the ARC has to be IP ready for implementation, and not all are. There's a heavy emphasis on resilience, as IP systems operate different risks than traditional bus-wired warden call systems, but ultimately it will be the contender for a standard warden call system. But the costs are still high by comparison to what a customer has previously invested in. NCS has developed its own app for the Android device. It's a user configurable interface. This is shown in full fat version here, but it's feature rich and will undoubtedly enhance the communication options for a service user with video calls, free Skype calls, and access to basic internet services. But there is a balance. Think of a teenager with a smartphone and how much time they spend on that. We all know it's too long. So why would it be different for a more mature service user? We've all worked very hard and sacrificed tremendous amounts of social interaction during this pandemic. Let's not let technology perpetuate any social exclusion. Just a quick nod to another digital option for group systems. Decommission sites totally and put in dispersed alarms. I have a product embargo on images for the new Melody alarm, but to give you some idea of what the functions it can deliver, are shown here. We use Symphony in our IP capabilities, and it also has the 4G fallback when used as a standalone dispersed device. There is still a requirement for on-site communications, and the technology of DECT is still the technology of choice. This is an example of how we typically plan to ensure coverage. This is shared with the customer so they have absolute confidence in our advice. Our Harmony system has dual receivers, Tunstall as well as our own peripherals. So if you have Tunstall Telecare peripherals that they are compatible with our Harmony warden call system. So your existing stock investment is protected. If you need more, you can either look to buy more Tunstall or look at our competitively priced Telecare range. To give you an example of that, our pendant is just £25. The kit works. We've tested it, but like all suppliers, there is a slight different interpretation of the communications protocol, and more testing across multiple ARC platforms is essential for systems to be and deliver true interoperability. All suppliers are doing this testing and evidencing that as and when they completed their testing. However, unfortunately, RF compatibility is light years away. We are looking for field trial customers, or if you're just curious to know a little bit more about NCS, please do not hesitate to contact me on the details shown on the screen. Thank you for listening.
Me? Can you hear me, Paul?
I can.
Oh yeah, great. Sorry, I lost you then for a second. I didn't know that might have been me or yourself. Brilliant. Thanks for your presentation. We'll go straight into some questions if that's okay with you. So you mentioned on the Harmony warden call system, there was the opportunity to do, from what I could see, was the Now IP protocol. Is that the BS 8521-2? Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Just for the technical amongst you out there. And you mentioned the analog protocol as TT92. Is that the only protocol it would work with, or would it work with a number of different ones?
Okay, at the moment it's working with TT92 because it's considered the optimum standard across all different platforms for warden call systems, apart from the very old Piper Group system where it may just have TT old on, but there shouldn't be too many of those out there. So TT92 is the current protocol conversion. We are looking at other BS 8521-1 conversion as well as an on-development. But in the first instance, this is about getting something out there just to reassure the customers that if something were to happen a lot faster than anticipated, they can be ready.
So that universal digital communicator at the moment is it aimed predominantly at what are the most common devices out there in the community at the moment that people might sort of realise that they have? Well,
it is, I say, supplier agnostic in terms of different manufacturers of warden call system, because it's operating on site at that PSTN connection level. So it's effectively any of the suppliers warden call systems that don't have an IP capability or an immediate upgrade path without replacing the whole thing. Then the digital communicator will sit on there and it'll do the translation whilst decisions or discussions are made about what happens to the rest of the equipment.
Okay, and you mentioned that there's a built-in router that was on the yep. System. So that would mean that if you had, say, a BT broadband, you wouldn't use the BT broadband router, you'd use the built-in router instead. Is that how I'm reading that?
Yes, correct. So the Ethernet connection would come from our UDC.
Okay, and do you have any recommendations about which comms provider people should use?
No, I mean there are choice. Obviously, there's the roaming SIM element to it. We have our own agreement with the supplier around the SIMs that we use, but we're not overly precious about that. If a customer has a contract in place with an existing supplier and they pre-negotiated a good price, then we'll quite happily use their SIMs. We're not precious about it at all.
And you mentioned a local ARC. What did you mean by that? You've done some testing with a local ARC?
Right, so we've developed our own ARC within our workshop, and we're testing through to that. It just then gives us a test facility for any field installed equipment to put a test through if they haven't got the IP capabilities themselves. So we can approve it at installation and commissioning stage.
Okay, and you've done some testing already, or there's some stuff in train. Have you got any timescales around that?
Okay, we're looking at obviously PNC is an issue because we don't have the no IP capabilities on PNC to test through to. We're in discussions with a few partners that have the AnswerLink system, and we're on the Verkazan partnership, waiting to hop onto the UMO system to do some testing with them as well.
Okay. And finally, the Symphony, the fully IP unit, that would go in with all new cabling, all new peripherals, and everything.
It is. Yes, it is. It's a complete replacement. The infrastructure of busward traditional warden core systems just simply doesn't lend itself to even with some cajoling and some junction boxes. It really doesn't lend itself to handling a full IP system. So your option is to change.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Paul.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time, and we'll catch up soon. And no doubt people will be in touch to hear more about your individual solutions. So thank you for that.
No problem.
If I can ask you to switch off your camera and go on mute, and then I'll bring Stuart onto the call.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, afternoon, Stuart. Right, without further ado, I'll hand over to you. You able to just put your slides up, and then I'll start the clock, so to speak. Okay, brilliant. I think I can see them. Yeah.
Can you see it as a full PowerPoint, or can you see all the slides?
I can see it as a PowerPoint, not all the slides, just your intro slide.
Single slide?
Yeah.
And that changes slide? Yeah. Great stuff. Okay. Just to be sure.
Good luck. I'll speak to you in a minute.
No problem. Thanks very much, Tim, and thanks everybody, and thanks for the opportunity for
for presenting today. My name's Stuart Carroll. I'm the National Sales Manager for Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare. Legrand Assisted Living and Healthcare is an operational business unit of the Legrand Group. It currently consists of 5 brands: Tyntec, Jontec, Aidcall, Neat and Intervox, and it provides market-leading technology-enabled care solutions for all health, housing and social care environments. We pride ourselves on offering solutions, not just products, and we have a company ethos of choice and interoperability, which is a big topic of today's conference. Our products are designed and manufactured in the UK, and they meet all European standards for safety critical systems, and they're available on multiple frameworks and portals, including Scotland Excel, PFH, Northern Housing Consortium, Fusion 21, just to name a few. And they're designed to only use open, non-proprietary critical communication protocols. And a few people have spoken this morning about SCAPE and now IP and Senelec, and it does sound sometimes like we're naming stars, but in all cases, those protocols have now been ratified by BSI, and the only 2 protocols for digital in the UK is TS 50134-9, that's for digital dispersed alarms, and there's BS 8521-2, and that's for digital schemes. So if you're going to procure, then you need to make sure that for dispersed, they're speaking TS, and for schemes, they're speaking BS. The digital switchover has big implications for tech. Analog assisted living alarms and systems simply won't work the same way over digital networks. They will become less reliable with a higher rate of failed calls, and traditional devices and systems will become tougher to install and to maintain. Legrand have used an internal program called ELIOT, which stands for Electrical Legrand Internet of Things. We've created a substantial program designed to transition all of our platforms from analog to digital. But in addition to that, we've also led on the development of new UK and European digital standards. We've developed a white paper with the GGI, the Good Governance Institute. That was launched at the Houses of Parliament in February last year, just before COVID changed the world. We've played an instrumental part in the Scottish Pathfinder and Test of Change projects, and our equipment and CMP, our cloud management portal, has recently been included in the Scottish Digital Telecare Security Assessed Suppliers scheme that Andy mentioned earlier on in the day. And most importantly, we're working in partnership with all of our customers throughout the UK to help them to plan their transition and, of course, realise the benefits of digital. And we've used that ELIOT programme to develop a unique portfolio of digital systems and services across the Tyntec, Jontec and Aidcall brands that can introduce safety critical into any environment that an older or a vulnerable person can call home, all the way from the individual property to the hospital ward. When developing the next generation of digital systems, our in-house R&D resource considered the needs and wants of all of the stakeholders, from the boardroom to the resident and everyone in between. It was vital that we protected past investment wherever possible. We prioritised the development of a digital communicator that can allow digital connectivity on some legacy systems, but at the same time develop natively digital solutions that could be purchased with confidence today when planning for the future. We needed to deliver something state-of-the-art whilst maintaining simplicity when it came to how a resident would interact with the system during a crisis, the KISS approach. A blended approach was required, offering safety critical, standards driven digital systems that can provide the essential and yet integrate with third-party products and systems to also deliver the desirable. XT2 is our latest group living system. It is natively digital and it offers significant digital advantages such as speed of connection, an over 24-hour battery backup in local power failure scenarios, and multiple speech paths both on and off site. But it's also been developed to be a hybrid system, so it's able to work in an analog world if your ARC isn't yet digitally enabled, and in most cases it can hang on existing cable infrastructures to minimise time, save disruption and of course costs. It meets all the standards for safety critical systems in group living environments and of course speaks the open protocol BS8521-2, so is interoperable with any developer's ARC platform. And it also has significant advantages for tenants, including the ability to personalise their home with individual volume levels and the ability to contact different individuals or teams depending on the reason for the call or the alarm. A pendant press, for example, could contact the scheme manager, whereas a fall detector activation could contact a specialist team. It has the ability for the resident to say, "I'm okay," without having to wait in the morning and wait for the ring around. It has the ability to have messages left for them on their room units, such as there's a package to collect downstairs, and I'm sure we all have lots of Amazon deliveries at the moment. Digital displays can be placed around the scheme, showing events, information and pictures, scheme manager's shift pattern and contact details in reception, details of coffee mornings and bingo evenings in the lobby, and perhaps menu of the day in the restaurant. In addition, there's a comprehensive range of digital always-on Telecare peripherals that can be easily added to any apartment to tailor it to the needs of the resident. Devices including environmental, movement, falls, epilepsy, medication adherence, and they can all be added by the on-site staff rather than an engineer. And in addition to that, it has links through radio, hardwired, and a built-in Bluetooth interface to connect to third-party systems. The Bluetooth is currently only being used to provide door entry remotes for the residents with poor mobility, but there are lots of other future state applications that we can use Bluetooth for. And as you would expect from a digital system, a future state cloud management portal and a comprehensive data well. And the idea of the data well, together with developments in AI and machine learning, is to provide early intervention opportunities. Traditional tech has focused on reaction. A fall has to take place before a fall detector will place an alarm. A flood detector only warns of a crisis once the taps have actually been left on. But if we can use the data to predict an event, early intervene and prevent it, then we can save both personally and financially. Prediction and prevention with the safety net of reaction should the crisis occur, creating true person-centered solutions in a home environment that is flexible and adaptable, giving the ability to age in place and to remain independent for longer. And it's vital that a supplier offers much more than just products. As such, we have a range of services and departments that can be incorporated into a turnkey solution which is tailored to a customer's needs. Regional and national support tailored to you, an in-house team for design, installation and maintenance, and a network of approved installers and partners if you would prefer to work with somebody else for the installation element. An in-house marketing department to promote your successes and case studies, and bespoke financial packages allowing you to match need with budgets. The digital horizon brings challenges and opportunities, and the closer you get, the further it sometimes feels away. But Legrand have the products, services, solutions, and experience of a global specialist. We would like to be your trusted technology partner, helping to realise the benefits and unleash your digital premium. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Stuart. And if you can just take down your slides, we'll have a bit of a Q&A. So the Advent XT2, you mentioned that it can be connected to any platform. Is there any evidence of or which platforms it has connected to and is in operation in the UK? Yeah, lots. I think specifically in Scotland, we've done an awful lot of work with the Answerlink platforms at the likes of BR24 and Edinburgh and Perth and Kinross. But we've also got some evidence of it working to Apello sites, and I think, as was mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of work with Innovation through their partner program at the moment. PNC not so yet because it's not ready for BS8521-2, but as soon as it is ready, they will adopt that open standard, and we speak an open standard. They listen to an open standard and understand it, and that allows that interoperability and communication. Brilliant. Okay, and you mentioned in your presentation the protection of past investment, and I know that that won't be the case, for example, for all peripherals potentially, or how do you look at that protection of past investment?
Yeah, protection of past investment. I think at the start of the Elliott programme, we prioritised the development of a digital communicator, as I mentioned, and that can be retrofitted to existing Advent XT systems and allow them to move to a broadband connection away from PSTN and speak the digital open protocol BS8521-2. Schemes have a long life cycle, a lot longer than dispersed alarms, and the market expectation is that the investment will last at least 15 years. And I'm sure there's people on this call that'll say 15 years and the rest. So we expect our schemes to last a good long time. The digital communicator allows us to make a Tyne-Tech system, say, purchased 10 years ago, when digital wasn't even a consideration, work reliably over next generation digital networks at a fraction of the cost of a new system. So not all systems can be retrofitted with the new digital communicator, but we can help develop a plan that will include a combination of new systems and augmented existing ones in order to achieve a fully digital estate for best value money.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And something I guess that was touched on earlier was around the security of that communication between the scheme, and the ARC. How does the systems you've described kind of address those issues?
Yeah, Andy did allude to it earlier on, and security has played a big part of our advancements in digital and what we're going to be doing moving forward. And to be fair, Scotland and the digital office has been at the very heart of making sure that security is a key consideration when developing systems. So it is a vital consideration, especially when you're going to put communications over the public internet. We all know that the internet is it's an amazing innovation, but it's also full of hazards. And the protection of data, especially personal data, health-related data, needs to be prioritised. Legrand's digital systems, we use private APNs, access points, and private VPNs, virtual private networks, in order to protect and encrypt the data at both the residential and the ARC end of the digital end-to-end solution. But also in group living systems, the same element that provides that VPN also provides a GSM resilience. So the broadband, if the primary broadband connectivity is lost over fibre, then the scheme will continue to operate unrestricted over air, and there will be security no matter which medium you're using.
Thank you, Stuart. Really appreciate your time. And I'll ask you now to just unshare and mute, and we'll move on. But thank you again.
Thank you.
And if I can ask Paul to join us on screen. Afternoon, Paul.
Afternoon. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. If you want to fire the old slides up, and we'll make sure that's working all right.
Yeah. Has that come up yet? I'll try again.
Try again. Oh, yeah, something's coming up now. I can see it, and then you've just put it on slideshow, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be on. How's that?
Yeah, perfect. Over to you, Paul.
Hi there. So thanks, Tim, for introducing me, and thanks everybody for inviting me to this. My name's Paul Queenan. I'm the TSR for Tunstall. And first of all, the digital transition is happening, and it's happening and possible with Tunstall because you're in safe hands. So our vision is a world where people have the freedom to live life to the full in a choice, in a place of their choice. Our mission is to provide data-driven, technology-enabled solutions and services to improve our customers' ability to deliver more efficient models for health care management in a community setting. But most importantly, people are at the heart of our trusted solutions. So we are always finding innovative ways to provide the appropriate support and care packages through digital technology, and that's what drives Tunstall to continually develop its products and services. We always aim to balance independence with reassurance and provide tailored support which meets the needs of individuals, organisations and healthcare providers, both now and in the future. So as digital technology is driving transformational change, as solutions become increasingly digital, it's creating a more connected and intelligent world. But what are the current challenges? We've got an ageing population. This is with long-term conditions and comorbidities, health inequalities, staff shortages, and funding shortfalls. But what are the desired outcomes for our service users? We need independence and dignity, health and well-being, access to care, avoidance of complex and acute care, and a quality of life. And we see digital technology as an enabler for all of that. We can have data insights with greater data sharing and integration of health, housing, and social care, improved process efficiency, and technology and data innovation. And all of that together can bring a proactive and preventative monitoring solution for the future. So I'm sure all of you have seen something like this before, the slides before. Most important slides are where we are now, just past centre. BT are already stopping in certain areas to provide new PSTN analogue lines. So that's already happening. Most importantly, the end point for all of this digital change is 2025. I think that's been some confusion for some people, but it's the end point. It'll be fully switched over. What I have found is talking to some service users and some people that are using analogue lines, I've been quite heartened when I talk to some telephone providers who have said they've tried to change to a digital line and they've asked if there's a social alarm on that phone line, or they've looked at the line and the usage of it, and that provider has said, no, you're not allowed to switch over. You can't use a digital line right now. And that sort of guidance is quite good, hearing that from some of the phone companies. So our solutions as they stand just now are our Communicall V, which is our integrated platform, most commonly installed. And we have Communicall VIP, and that's our first IP housing communication systems. But most importantly for both of these, the IP is IP on-site, not off-site. So right now we need a digital connectivity solution that will get us through this transition period into using digital lines. So what digital solutions do we have right now? First and foremost, I would love to say right now at this event that we've got something right now. Rest assured, it is coming. It's coming over the next 3 months or thereabouts. And if this event was in 3 months' time or so, I would be able to talk about our IP connector. Our IP connector is the first step on the ladder for group living for us. So that's because it's going to protect the value of the current systems. It's just that it's a box that will bolt in and will communicate and transmit and transfer the tone-based transmissions into IP to go through to the control centre. So it reduces that immediate capital investment, at the same time ensuring the continuity of service scheme to ARC. And there's very much a phased approach available to your upgrade plan, because we've got so many other things in development. Our next generation systems will provide longer term system requirements, both for scheme upgrades, possibly using existing cable infrastructure and bus cabling, to new builds using structured cabling networks, or possibly if you want to have any, if you're prepared to put up with any of the disruption and redecoration in installing structured cabling in the upgrades, you'll be available to fit a system in there as well. So we've got lots of options, and these digital solutions are designed to meet the future demands of the UK market. But most importantly, options to use the cutting edge advanced functionality to leverage the full benefits of digital. So we're always supporting your requirements. If you look at emergency call response, the whole idea of this is with group living is to use now IP 1.6. That's going to provide faster, safer connections, concurrent calls, be standards compliant, and use a resilient architecture. That can lead to improved functionality for residents. So if we have HD voice for video, door entry anywhere, which we have at present. So some of our systems at present, you can have a pendant, a movie device that you will have anywhere in the building. And if a cop, say somebody comes to the front door and calls up to the flat, if the person's in the lounge, they're able to say, sorry, I'm in the lounge, but I'll let you in and then say a courier will be able to come straight there rather than go up to the house and miss a delivery, for example. We're going to provide a choice of hardware with Wi-Fi connectivity that can have app connectivity, very much a tiered functional option approach. But development communications are going to give us quick access to a house manager, intuitive house manager portal, and video calling both on-site and off-site, which is very important. Activities of daily living can lead to the benefits in health and well-being in a connected home with solutions such as our My Mobile Health app and smart home integration. And ultimately into virtual call services for companion apps, enhanced remote access management, and links to our management service platform. Tunstall can provide all of these solutions. So we've got integrated solutions from work and call, intruder alarm, fire alarm, door entry and access control, either on structure cabling or on existing bus cabling. And what that means is we can have a coordinated delivery of full care and safety systems, a complete solution from a single partner. Integrated systems, coordinated installation, combined maintenance program, and a single point of contact for the management of your on-site technology. So where is all that leading us? It's leading us to this journey. So some of you might have experienced this before, is right now we live in a reactive world. We live in a world of 24-hour monitoring with rapid response in the event of an emergency. That's usually utilising the grouped alarm systems such as VVIP or dispersed alarm systems. But as we see advancing levels of technology and service innovation, we're going to move to a proactive service. That's where Telecare sensors and outbound calling can be tailored to the individual need for the client and the service user. With increasing levels of personalisation, individual care, we can move to a predictive model where activity and health monitoring can preempt and avoid adverse events, to a cognitive care system. That's where we're deriving insights through the connection of multiple data sets. That will further improve the overall health and well-being of our end customers. So let's go over what we've got. Right now, Tunstall, as I say, I would love to be able to present a system that would work right now in Now IP, but it is coming this summer. At the same time as implementing the Now IP for the field, we will have our Now IP call handler embedded within PNC. Beyond that, we have our next generation systems. At least two types of systems. One that will work on existing bus cabling, where you don't have to rewire systems, onto new builds, where we can install new structured Cat6 cabling. So that's me for now. Tim, hand over to you.
Thank you, Paul, to take your slides down.
Yeah.
And I've got some questions for you. So, jam tomorrow then.
Can only see what I've got.
Hey, mid-August. Can we hold it? Yeah. Okay. It's all right. You just said 3 months, so.
Yeah. Mid-August. Yeah. Just mid-August will be in probably user acceptance testing and field trials where we're looking for partners, and it'll be released immediately after that.
Okay. And are you looking for people to get involved in that? I mean, there's a lot of customers chomping at the bit, I think, to get this underway. And as you know, those exchanges are getting upgraded from June.
They are. So we've already had tentative talks with some people that want to go through that field testing, and we'll be looking into that and asking people that are prepared to enter into some sort of agreement for that. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess you've got the IP connector. That's the backwards compatible. And we'll look after sort of schemes that have been deployed, what, in the last 10 years-ish? Is that
easily? It'll go back to anything that currently uses tone-based dialing, which in our case would take you back to Haven from around 1991.
Okay. Okay. And then the second option is a new VI kind of non-IP device. Is that what you're saying?
No, that will be an IP system, but we've got an IP system, but as already been mentioned, there will be limitations on what you can do in IP on existing bus cabling, but it will be a full end-to-end solution, all the way from the speech module right the way through to the control center.
And so if people have got obviously the existing Tunstall scheme equipment and then they've got a PNC, they'll need to upgrade both the scheme equipment with the IP connector potentially, or a new bit of scheme equipment, and then upgrade the PNC as well. Is that correct?
If they have our latest versions of PNC, then it'll be a patch that goes on that rather than any change of any infrastructure within the PNC.
And is that version 8 point something onwards?
Yes, that'll be a 8.3.
8.3 onwards. So I guess what you're saying to your existing customers is get on to 8.3 kind of as soon as you can in preparation for this. Is that right?
That's right, and it's coming. It's just around the corner.
Okay. And in terms of existing peripherals and cabling, I guess what you're saying is with the IP connector, everything stays in place. But if it's a new deployment of new, like a VIP, for example, it would be new cabling and new peripherals potentially? No,
as we've always been very proud, and our peripherals are backward compatible in the most part. And yes, like others, we're moving to peripherals, bi-directional peripherals that are IP, that you've got the two-way, but at all times we will make sure that the older peripherals are still available to be used on the system, so it protects the investment. So that's very important for people. If people have already invested in the technology, be it peripherals or under systems, we've got solutions going forward. And you mentioned now IP 1.6. Is that BS 8521-2? -2, yes, absolutely. And so that will be the default setting for all PNC 8.3s onwards, will be that BS 8521-2. Yeah, for the IP world, for group living, obviously it's going to have to, we live in a hybrid world. There'll be a long time before we're fully digital and only digital. So it's going to be able to take all of the existing TT codes, old, new, 92, 21, and move on to Senelec for dispersed alarms, and now IP for grouped systems. Okay. Thank you, Paul. And I'll welcome Geraldine back on screen.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tim. This is really interesting and we're getting so much information. So guys, we're going to give you just a little 5-minute comfort break. We'll start back again prompt in 5 minutes, 20 past. But if anybody wants to go get themselves a wee drink of water, have a wee comfort break, we'll pick up after that. Please put your questions in. See if there's anything in particular that that you're feeling isn't being answered that's important to you, and we can pick that up either at some point during the session or in the post mailing. Okay, thank you.